Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the fourth session in our CMS virtual event series. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name's Ella. I'm one of the early talent acquisition advisors here at CMS. I'm based up in the north of England and look after assessment and selection for all of our recruiting offices. Here today, I've also got the lovely Meet and Engage team who are doing all the technical stuff in the background. And I'm also joined by Kat Crisp, who is our early talent acquisition manager. She'll be interacting with you guys on the chat this afternoon. She'll be able to answer all of your questions and also help pose some questions for the Q&A that we're going to be doing a little bit later. I'm also excited to be joined by an equally brilliant Kat Bambry, who plays a very, very important role of reviewing every single application that we receive from yourselves here at CMS. She is going to share her invaluable insights later on in the session. So, just before we kick off then, I wanted to start by asking you all a quick question. Popping up on your screen any second now, you will see a question asking you, on the scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel about the CMS application process? Starting from 1 being extremely confident all the way down to 5 being not very confident at all. I'll give you a few seconds to answer that, and whilst you are, I'll run through the agenda for today's session. So for those of you who have not yet applied to our programmes, I'll give you a quick rundown of all of our opportunities that are available to you for you to apply to right now. We'll then take you through step by step the 4-stage application process, and we'll walk you through what to expect at each stage, along with some vital hints and tips in order to stand out from a very competitive crowd. As mentioned before, we will also be welcoming the wonderful Kat Bambry, who screens every single one of our applications. She'll be providing her key pieces of advice based on the thousands and thousands of applications that she has read for CMS over the years. Trust me, you'll be wanting to make some notes on this session, and she'll be going through lots and lots of hints and tips. Then we will finish with a Q&A with myself and Kat, who will be answering some of your burning questions. So please do start to use the chat function to ask any questions that you might have. Kat Crisps, our ETA manager, will be responding to some of them via the chat, but she'll also be collating the questions that might need some more exploration, and they will be posed to myself and Kat a little bit later. We've got a wealth of early talent acquisition experience on the call today who are really here to help you with your applications. So to make sure that you make the most of this opportunity. Don't be afraid to ask any questions at all, even if they seem quite silly or quite small, because if you're thinking it, chances are everybody else will be thinking it as well. So just having a look at your poll then, your poll answers, only 2% of you are saying that you feel extremely confident with the application process. 50% saying that you feel quite confident, and 15% are saying that you don't feel very confident at all. So hopefully this session today will go some way in supporting your applications and helping you feel at home with what to expect. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll just run through very quickly our opportunities that are available to apply for now. Here at CMS, we aim to recruit 50% law and 50% non-law students to our programmes. So don't feel like you have to have a law degree to come and work at a law firm. You certainly don't. We embrace diversity here, and we embrace diversity of thinking. So if you've got a history, English, economics, anything else degree, then we absolutely do welcome your applications to our programmes. First up, we've got what we call the First Steps scheme. The First Steps work experience scheme is aimed at first year law students and penultimate year non-law students, and it is a great insight into CMS. The programme runs for 1 week, usually around Easter time, and includes a blend of practical work experience, skills shadowing sessions, networking, and it will give you a great insight into the firm. All First Step students are paid £450 for the week, and we recruit students across all of our UK offices, including Aberdeen, Glasgow and Edinburgh, Bristol, London, Sheffield and Manchester. The programme is also a great feeder into what we call the vacation scheme, the CMS Academy, as all successful students from the First Steps programme will be fast-tracked to the assessment day for the vacation scheme. So it's well worth your time applying in your first year of your law degree or your penultimate year of if you're a non-law student to the First Steps programme, because it really can help you get onto the ladder and help you get that place at the assessment day for the very, very competitive vacation schemes. Speaking of the vacation scheme, the CMS Academy is our next generation vacation scheme, and it's the main route to securing a training contract here at CMS. We don't offer separate training contracts. You have to come through the academy in order to train with us. In contrast to other law firms' vacation schemes that you might see, the duration of our academy is actually 3 weeks. This is because the first week is dedicated to what we call the Business of Law Week, and it will see all individuals across all offices coming together to complete an innovative leadership development training course. It comprises of panel discussions with field experts, work simulation exercises, real-life client visits, and lots of other exciting things. The second part of the programme then includes your in-person internship, which we are extremely excited to be bringing back after the last couple of years of COVID. If you successfully complete the CMS Academy and are offered a training contract, the offer will be for the home office where you spend your second and third week of your vacation scheme. So just take that into consideration when you're applying to our programmes. If you're thinking about the next steps, the SQE or the LPC, in terms of what we ask you to take here at CMS, if you join us before August 2023, then you'd be required to take the LPC, the legal practice course. Anyone joining CMS after this point, so from sort of February 2024 onwards, we ask you to complete the SQE, the Solicitors Qualifying Examinations. Both of these programmes are fully funded by CMS. We pay for the course, and we also give you a bursary of up to £10,000 whilst you complete these programmes. If you're thinking, I really want to work in a law firm, not sure that I want to be a fee earner or a solicitor, we also have the Business Development and Marketing Graduate Programme here at CMS. This is a really exciting, relatively new programme, which works in a similar way to the training contracts, where you have different seats in different areas of the law firm, rotating around different areas of the business, but focusing on what we call business development and marketing. You don't have to have a law degree, just an interest in the law and how big law firms work would be ideal. The application process for all of these programmes is exactly the same, so that's what we're going to talk through today. We also have, just to mention, the Solicitor Apprenticeship Programme. If you are a current school or college leaver, then you can apply to this, or it's open to career changers who don't currently have a degree. The eligibility for this programme varies depending on what point you are in your academic journey, on what you're studying and where. So if you are interested in this particular programme, do go and check out our Early Talent website to find out some more information. Perhaps Kat Crisp on the chat would be able to give you a little link to the website to help you find that. If after today you're still not quite sure about what programme you can apply to, we've got the wonderful Pathfinder tool on our website, which is a bit like those sort of old magazine games that you used to play where you answer yes, no, and it will take you down a certain path. If you pop in your details into the Pathfinder tool, it will give you some information on what programmes you are currently eligible for and how to apply to them. So do go and check them out if you've got any more questions after today. So, just one thing to note, applications for all of these programmes are now open. They opened at the start of September and they will be closing on Christmas Eve, the 24th of December. Here at CMS, because we recruit for so many programmes and we have so many opportunities, we do recruit on a rolling basis, which means a first come, first served basis. So please do get your applications in early. If you haven't started thinking about them, do start thinking about them now, because like I say, we don't want you to miss out on your opportunity to apply. Great. So the application process itself then. The application process at CMS and at lots of different law firms is split into a few different sections. Here at CMS, we have 4 main sections which we ask you to complete, which will take place from around now, if you haven't already applied, to January, which is when we run the assessment days. Just very quickly, we have our online application form, which in itself is split into a few different sections, including things like academic requirements, work experience, and written questions. If you're successful after the initial screen of the online application, we then invite you to the critical reasoning test. This is a Watson Glaser test, and I'll talk in a bit more detail about that in just a minute. We also have the video interview, which is a virtual online video interview. And then if you're successful after those 3 sections, then you'll be invited to the assessment day, which will be taking place in January or February next year. So I'm just going to break down those different areas of the application now and give you a bit more insight into each section and a few more details, hints and tips, and then Kat Bambry is going to give her overview of how best to succeed in just a second. So the first stage of the online application then is the written application. You do this online via our website. Again, we'll try and pop a link in the chat so you can get a direct link of how to apply. And the online application is split into a few different sections. So first up, we ask for an overview of your academic achievements to date. However, we do take a holistic approach to all of our applications, which means that we have actually removed minimum grade requirements for our graduate programmes. We then also ask you to provide details of your work experience. So what have you done to date to show that you are interested in a legal career? However, don't worry, we don't expect you to have any specific legal experience so far. We appreciate that, especially after the pandemic, it can be really, really difficult to get work experience in law firms, especially large law firms like CMS. So what we do look for at this stage is a variety of experiences which have helped mould your ambition to work in a global law firm like CMS. Now, these can include things like positions of responsibility at school or at home. So perhaps you are head of your netball team, your debating club, perhaps you're a carer. It could include volunteering, so maybe you help out at your local brownies or scouts, perhaps you litter pick, perhaps you're a mentor to a younger student at your school. It can also include virtual experiences, so perhaps you've done some online work experience through companies like Farage or FutureLearn, which has helped sort of develop your ambition to study in the legal sector. Or it could be things like part-time work. So perhaps you've worked in a bar or a restaurant or a shop close to your home. Like I say, we don't necessarily expect you to have legal work experience, but what we do like to see in your applications is how you link it to the legal sector. So if you've worked, for example, in Tesco's, how is that relevant to working at CMS? And one example could be, for example, dealing with customers or dealing with clients. That's what we do here every day at CMS. We work with our clients, and that's what you would do perhaps on the checkouts. So try and link that in your application to make sure that you can really showcase your abilities and the skills that you've learned so far. Next up then, you'll be asked to submit responses to 3 written questions. In your response to these questions, we're looking for things like attention to detail, motivation for working at CMS specifically, commercial awareness, and your general motivation to be a lawyer. Remember to do your research. Hopefully you watched the Getting Prepared session, one of our webinars from a couple of weeks ago. If you didn't, you can catch up on it on our website. Here we had lots of useful hints and tips on researching law firms and how to make the right impression and how to stand out in your initial application. A few things to remember. Here at CMS and most applications that you make, recruiters essentially like to be wooed, and we like to see that you have done your research into a particular law firm and a particular job. So make sure that you're doing more research than just sort of, the general website. Have a look at law articles, have a look on social media, have a look on in the legal press and financial papers to find out more about the company that you're applying to. What we really hate as recruiters is if we could just remove CMS and replace it with any other law firm's name and the question still makes sense, then we can see that it's a bit of a generic answer. We can see that you've not put too much specific research into your answers, and essentially it shows that you're not passionate for working at that particular law firm. So really do make sure that you do your research, really do make sure that you understand the type of law that we do here, and then pop that in your answers in your written questions. So the Watson-Glaser test then. If you are successful after the initial screen, you will be sent a link to complete the Watson-Glaser critical reasoning test. Critical thinking can be defined as the ability to identify and analyse problems, seeking relevant information to evaluate and reach appropriate and logical conclusions. This particular test measures the skills involved in critical thinking, which are absolutely essential for being a successful lawyer. Now, we recommend that you don't just dive in to the critical reasoning test. What we do recommend is that you practice. It's really important to get to know what the critical reasoning test expects of you, what it feels like, the time pressures, and how long you have to answer each question. We do have a practice test on our website, and I'll ask Kat to pop that into the chat for you to go and have a little look at. Make sure that you do give it a few goes. It's completely free. It will not affect your sort of academic standing with us. It doesn't matter if you fail it in your practice, and we don't take that into account when looking at your applications. But what it will help you do is make sure that when you do come to do it and things are a little bit more pressured because you've only got a few days to complete it, that you will feel a little bit more calm and collected because you'd have seen the test, you know what to expect, and you can really put your best self forward. So if you successfully meet the benchmark for the Watson-Glaser critical reasoning test, next you'll be invited to the video interview. Now, this is what we call a pre-recorded video interview, and they can feel a little bit strange because essentially you will be asked questions by myself, but it will be a recording of myself and it won't be a live conversation or a live interview. You then have to record your answers on your own and submit them. And that can be a little bit alien because essentially you're just speaking to a screen and speaking to yourself to answer the questions. So what we recommend that you do, again, is practice. So as an overview, you'll be asked 4 questions to answer as part of the video interview. You'll have 60 seconds to prepare an answer, and then you'll have 60 seconds to answer the question. Again, a little bit of practice can go a long way here. If you start to have a think about the types of questions that you might be asked, if you're at university, go and ask your careers centre, or if you're at school, ask your careers advisor what sort of questions you'll be asked in these interviews, and start thinking and planning your answers. Then if you give yourself 60 seconds to prepare an answer, 60 seconds to record your answer, and actually practice recording yourself on your phone or your tablet or your laptop and watch it back. That way, again, you'll help settle any nerves that you've got, and you'll kind of have an understanding of what to expect when it comes to the actual session. With all of our application processes, we do take mitigating circumstances into account. If you need extra time on any of the things that we've talked about so far, the Watson-Glaser or the video interview test, please do just let us know at each stage of the application, and we'll be more than happy to put in some measures to support you to complete each of the stages. Finally then is the assessment day, and like I said, these will take place in January and February early next year. The assessment day is really a half day, and it's made up of 3 different sessions. We have the interview, the case study, and the group task. So we're going to cover our assessment day in much more detail in our imposter syndrome and assessment day webinar coming up on the 2nd of November. So if you haven't already signed up to that, do make sure that you sign up, even if you can't make it, because there'll be recordings available where we'll go into a lot more detail on how to succeed at assessment days and how to really put your best self forward in these situations. But just as a quick overview right now, you'll have an interview which will be made up of a 45-minute conversation with a senior lawyer or partner. That will be a conversational interview where they want to find out a bit more about you, about your experiences, about your motivations for working at CMS and for being a lawyer. You'll also have a case study, which is an individual task, and it will be research-based experience, where you're asked to complete a particular task in a certain amount of time and then relay back the information that you've found. You'll then have a group task, which essentially does what it says on the tin, where you'll be working together as a group in a role play exercise, perhaps pretending to advise a client, perhaps you'll be thinking about a particular case and working to find an outcome. So that's all from me then so far. Please do keep your questions coming in the chat. If you want any more details on a certain element of what I've talked about so far, please do pop that into the chat and we'll come to it in the Q&A in just a few minutes. So then, now I'm very excited to introduce Kat Bambry. Like I said earlier, she is the one person that reviews every single one of our applications that we receive here at CMS. We don't have a robot, there's no automated systems. We have one individual really taking care and reading every single one of your applications. She really has seen it all, and she is very much our recruitment guru. She is now going to spend some time with you, sharing her pearls of wisdoms and her hints and tips. She'll also be around a little bit later for the Q&A, so do keep those questions coming in. Okay, over to you, Kat.
Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. I haven't got much time, so what I wanted to do in my section is, are we able to just move the slides along? Perfect, thanks for that. Is talk about some of the pitfalls that we don't want you to fall into, and then on the flip side, some ways to make yourself stand out versus your competitors, because these are the questions that come up all the time. And we know that all of you have so much exciting stuff to tell us. We know you all have lots of experience and loads of things to bring to the firm. But the problem is that a lot of candidates fall down at the very earliest stage because of some really simple mistakes, and we don't want any of you to do that. So we thought it'd be quite useful to just go through those before. So Ella's touched on some of these, but I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that you're eligible for the program that you're applying for. And we're not talking about grades here, because like we say, we welcome people from every academic background, so don't worry about that. It's about what stage you're at in your educational journey. So as Ella mentioned, for our academy program, you need to be in the you need to be in your penultimate year if you're a law student, or your final year if you are a non-law student, or you can be a graduate or a career changer. If you apply before then, you simply won't be considered, and because of the volume of applications, we can't simply move you onto the First Steps program if that's what you're eligible for instead. So as Ella mentioned, we have loads of tools on the Early Talent website to make sure you're really crystal clear about which is the right program for you. Related to that, another issue that we see at the very earliest stage of the application process is attention to detail and accuracy issues. And, you know, we're not talking about a couple of minor typos here. We're talking about candidates who don't answer the questions that we're asking you. So these motivational questions that Ella mentioned are absolutely crucial. Honestly, to my mind, they're the most important differentiator to work out whether you have motivation for the firm, to really understand whether you have done your research, whether you have worked out what it is that makes CMS unique, and you can really convey that you want to be part of the firm, and you've done your research and you've got that passion. So, for example, I'll let you in to an insider scoop right now. we ask for 200 words for all of those free text questions. Now, if someone is applying to us and only writes 50 words, there's really no chance that they're going to compete favourably versus someone else who has really taken the time to meet that word count, to maximise every sentence, fill it full of kind of evidence of their research, passion for law, passion for CMS, and an understanding of our key sectors and area of expertise. So make sure you maximise the word count. Make sure you read those questions. Again, a bit of an insider scoop, if you've applied before, the questions are completely different this year. They're generally completely different every year, but I would say this year we've really changed them up to put much more of an emphasis on the kind of drive for achievement and tenacity that we're looking for. So pay close attention, weave in your research, your passion, your interest for CMS, and those are the things that are really going to differentiate you from all of the other people who are applying. And the final thing on the pitfalls to avoid, again, Ella's mentioned it, but I can't emphasize enough that if you leave your application to the very last minute, you're giving yourself the poorest chance of success. And that is because we're so fortunate to have lots of really, really strong applications that come in throughout the season. And it doesn't always happen, but it can happen. And that's why we're so vocal about it, that some of the people who apply in the last few days simply won't be considered. And that's such a shame. And we know that that means that we miss out on excellent candidates every year. But unfortunately, from a practical perspective, we don't want to penalise those candidates who apply early on and who are performing to the kind of level that we're excited to take forward. So if you haven't applied yet, don't panic. You're in absolutely loads of time. We're talking about, candidates that leave it till, the last 24, 48 hours, or maybe even a week before. So if you get your applications in October and November, you should be absolutely fine. So now, quickly onto the positives. So how can you make yourself stand out? Well, we've talked a lot about research, and Ella quite rightly has mentioned that doesn't mean just having a quick squiz over the graduate recruitment website and putting in a few buzzwords. That's not what we need at all. We want to know that you understand us as a firm, you understand our unique selling points, what makes us different to everyone else out there, and why does that excite you? So in terms of research, look at what we're portraying in our social media. We are going to be putting forward the kinds of cases, deals, news that we want to have at the forefront of our image, and that's for a good reason, because that's the kind of work we're super proud of, that's exciting, that's cutting edge. So keep abreast of all of that. It's so easy to just set up feeds to come in, pop up on your Instagram, do your research and see what's out there in the legal press. And if that's an area of law that interests you, note that down and see if there's an appropriate way to get that into either your application or hold it back for when you're interviewed, hopefully at final round. In terms of other ways to make yourself stand out, we say it first of all on the slide, be yourself. We want to get to know you, and we want you to be proud of what you can bring. So, please, I know they're going to cover imposter syndrome in another one of these fabulous webinars, but, if you haven't got exceptional academic results, please don't worry. Be yourself. Just submit your application. And if you want to share why perhaps you didn't reach the academics that you'd hoped for, please put that in our mitigating circumstances section. We also now have a huge emphasis, like I've mentioned, on the wider context of achievement. So, we understand that your achievements are not just limited to the results that you've got in academic life. So one of our questions now explicitly asks you to talk about when you've had to overcome a challenge. We're much more interested in that. Yes, you have to have, a minimum ability in terms of being able to take some challenging legal exams, but we're able to take a holistic view of the whole of your application when it comes to deciding whether that's the case. So please do not worry if you come from an alternative career background or if your academic results aren't top. We are about much more than that. And share what you're passionate about. There are loads of opportunities to add colour and flair to your application. So yes, you can do it in the free text questions. You can also do it, like Ella said, in the kind of wider definition of work experience. If you have positions of responsibility, if you have roles within your community, please absolutely make sure you include them. And like Ella said, think about how they link to your future success as a lawyer, because those logical links, although we don't explicitly ask for them on the form, will show that you understand the role, and also will enable us to give you the absolute best score because we know the value of that experience that you can bring. And then I think probably the final point that I'd like to make before we move on to questions is that, in terms of making yourself stand out from your competitors, we at CMS are future facing as a firm. We are all about innovation, about candidates who see the bigger picture. And I think, while the application process can feel really, really intense and at some points quite stilted, we know sometimes you have to wait for us to get back to you. What we want to reassure you about is that, we will take your overall package of the candidate into consideration, and if you can put across things like your understanding of commercial awareness, of how you would fit into the firm, how you see your future with the firm, then that's something that's absolutely going to make you stand out. As Ella said, one person, me, will look at all of those applications, and I take this job really, really seriously. We want to make it as fair, as objective, as positive as we can. For my part, what that means is looking at every application and looking for the positives, looking for all of the wonderful things that would make you a great future solicitor with us. So put the work in, do the research, communicate that passion for CMS, and the very best way to make yourself stand out is to just put the most of you into that application form, so we can really see who you are and how you would contribute to a future at CMS.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kat. So we're going to jump into the Q&A shortly, and I can see that there have been lots and lots of questions coming through. Just before we do that, I just wanted to touch on what we call contextual recruitment here at CMS. We are very, very passionate about social mobility, and like we've already spoken about, we have already removed things like our grade requirements, and we focus on things like drive for achievement. When we look at your applications, we also look at it in the context of what your achievements have been achieved in. So, for example, we look at what school you've gone to, what area you grew up, whether you're the first generation in your family as well. And all of those will help put your application into context when it comes to comparing candidates. So it's really, really important that if you feel comfortable that you do share that information with us, because we can use it to sort of help your application through to the next stages. Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to jump in with the Q&A now. I can see that we've had lots and lots of questions coming in, which is really exciting. And a big thanks to CatQuest, who's been answering some of them as we go. But we've got a few questions coming in, Kat Bambry, and I'll just take some and I'll post some to you as well. So first question then, I'll answer this one. It's about whether we submit a reference as part of the application. So the answer to that is you absolutely can if you want to. So we have an area where you can upload a PDF document of a previous appraisal or a previous employee's reference document. However, it is not essential, and if you don't have one, it won't be used against you at all. So it's an option, but you don't have to have it. Okay, the next question then, I'll ask you, Kat Bambry. So this is from Roger. Would it be ill-advised to weave my reasons for applying to CMS in the work experience section?
No, I don't think it would be ill-advised at all. I think you just want to be careful that what you're including is really relevant to that particular section. So I would say, rather than necessarily your reasons for applying to CMS, maybe what would be really, really good is if you could make links about your responsibilities within that particular role and how they would be applicable to law. And if in doing that, you can be even more specific and bring in why they'd be particularly helpful at CMS, then that would be great. What I think would look perhaps a little bit unusual and not as helpful is if it feels a bit disjointed and it's kind of like you're trying to shoehorn part of a different question in there. But if you're making logical links, for example, I don't know if like Ella mentioned, you talk about working in a customer service role, and you mentioned that you have effectively kind of client facing experience, and that you know that as a solicitor at CMS, we value providing extra value to our clients. Something like that would definitely be appropriate.
Yeah, also just to echo that point, although this isn't necessarily like work experience, these sessions, it's really great to see in your applications where you have interacted with CMS already. So for example, if you've attended lots of these webinars, do pop that down in your application. If you've come to our CMS live events, or maybe you've done an event with one of our CMS ambassadors at university, then do pop those down in your application, because although you're not showing your reasons why you're applying to CMS, through that you are displaying that you have interacted with us and that you've taken your time to really get to know us as a law firm in more detail. So do pop those down in your application as well. So the next question is from Anushka, and it asks whether there'll be an option for virtual assessment days. And the answer is absolutely yes. So last year, for the last couple of years, obviously assessment days have been run virtually because of COVID. But what we have found as a firm is that from an accessibility perspective, that this has allowed us to reach a lot more candidates, and for candidates to be able to participate from all over the country, and actually even from all over the world. Because they're virtual, you can essentially dial in from anywhere. And we've had individuals join us from India and Singapore and America and Canada on our assessment days, and they are individuals that we would have never been able to see previously. So yes, the answer is our assessment days will be virtual going forward. So next question then is from Jasmine, and I'll ask you this one, Kat Bambry. So how do we feel about name dropping in our application? So for example, if we've conducted some research into the firm by talking to an employee, should they mention that in their application?
This is such an interesting question. So yeah, thank you, Jasmine. So I mean, I think that as long as you are referencing the name for positive reasons, and to give more depth to the point that you're making, that's absolutely fine. I think everyone's probably reassured that we're moving away from the days where just name dropping someone that you happen to have bumped into ever at a law firm would kind of get you further down the process. And I know that's not what you're asking, Jasmine, but I think just from a kind of reassurance perspective, please know that that's not how we work, and haven't for quite some time. But yeah, I mean, I think what you mentioned is really interesting, because I think it goes even further than that. So yes, if you've managed to just make a connection that's helped you decide that CMS is the right firm for you. So you could say, I spoke to X partner about their work in this part of law, this sector, this deal, and give some really solid reasons. What we don't want is name dropping for name dropping's sake. So just saying, I spoke to a partner, also I like this about CMS, that's not going to get you very far. But yeah, if it's part of building a bigger picture, and also kind of relatedly, if there's a particular individual at CMS that inspires you because they work in a really niche field, and there are questions that talk about your understanding of challenges that are going on in law, it's absolutely fine to be quite specific about your research and mention a leading individual. We have lots of those at CMS. So yes, I think it's fine to mention them, but you want to do it in a way that shows that there's more to it than just purely mentioning the fact that you've ever had an interaction at CMS. Does that sound right? Would you agree with that, Ella?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've chatted to somebody just on LinkedIn for 30 seconds, I wouldn't bother doing it as a name drop, as a bit of a clanger. I wouldn't do it in that situation. What I would do, like Kat Bambry says, though, is if you've really researched a particular case, a particular area of law, then it's really, really important, because then it shows that you've done in-depth research into something that you're particularly interested in, which again will help you stand out, because it shows a particular area of law that you are interested in your application.
Oh, sorry, Ellen, just one more thing that just made me think, there's also the kind of, not reverse name dropping, but the fact that obviously a lot of you will have spoken to our trainees, and, I think what is also impressive, not necessarily using their name specifically, but saying that your interaction with, a junior member of the CMS team has opened your eyes to the kinds of tasks you do, or, the early responsibility that you've been given. Something like that is definitely positive, because, to us, that's something we're really proud of, that actually from day one, you're going to be given, really, really meaty tasks. And if your personal interaction, say a virtual law fair, has brought that to the fore as something that sets us apart from competitors, mentioning something like that is great. But again, you don't necessarily need it to be a name drop per se, but it can just be the fact that you are, again, you're kind of, you're shouting out the fact that you've made that effort, you've engaged with the firm, but in a way that actually has really real meaning and substance.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, the next question is all about the Watson Glaser. So is there a specific Watson Glaser pass mark? The answer to that one is not ever so straightforward. And the way that Watson Glaser work is that every year the percentile changes, and essentially you are assessed against the peer group who has taken the test at that particular time. So although we can't give you a specific mark, all that we can say is really just try your best. And like I said earlier, practice, practice, practice so that you can perform to the best of your ability when it does come to taking the test. Leah, Zoe has asked if there is an assessment day for the First Steps programme. Really good question, and apologies I didn't mention the slight difference earlier. So stages 1, 2 and 3 of the application process for First Steps are exactly the same as Academy, as the vacation scheme. So that's the written questions, the Watson Glaser and the video interview. For the vacation scheme, you'll then be invited to the assessment day, which is going to be virtual this year. But for First Steps, it will be conducted via a sort of more just of a video interview or a telephone interview. So it will be sort of a one part of the assessment day rather than all 3 parts of the assessment day. So I hope that helps. Next up then. This is a question about work experience at Bambry. So would you advise that in the work experience section, we include a section titled, for example, extracurricular involvement, and list any of the workshops, insight days or legal fairs that they have participated in?
Yep, I think that's absolutely a good idea. I think certainly, as Ella's mentioned, we want to know if you've attended our webinars, but we also, if obviously everyone here has done that, but in general, I think if you aren't able to engage directly with one firm for practical reasons, then it's good for us to know that you have at least got you've gone out there and you've sought as much practical engagement with other firms, with other commercial law firms as you can. So yes, I think that's absolutely fine. You're more than welcome, honestly, to use the work experience section as you see fit. So yes, you can put about engagement with other firms and with us, virtual experiences, you can put positions of responsibility, you can be quite creative in how you use that. But in general, the work experience section itself is like Ella says, it's not just about whether you've got commercial legal experience or paid work experience. So we can't make the form look as accessible for all of these different types of experience. So yes, absolutely take the initiative, because that's something else, unless you're going wildly off piste, any way that you use your initiative to put forward your experience in an appropriate way and in an appropriate level of detail, that's only going to be a positive thing. We won't always be able to give you extra marks for it, depending on how creative you've been, but it's certainly not going to count against you. So yes, absolutely include those, but certainly I'd say put to the fore the anything that relates to us as a firm, and then everything else you can perhaps have a little bit less detail on.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much. The next question then is about First Steps. So Amy has asked, do we think that individuals be at a disadvantage if they haven't completed the First Steps programme? You absolutely won't be at a disadvantage if you're applying to the vacation scheme, to the CMS Academy, because we do treat those applications as sort of completely separate. However, the First Step scheme can support your application to the Academy. So what I mean by that is, like what I said earlier, is that if you come on to First Steps, if you're successful, you'll then be fast tracked to the assessment day for the Academy. So although you're not disadvantaged, disadvantaged by not doing first steps. You know, we don't take that into account. That's not a measure of success for us if you're just applying for it organically. If you do first steps, it can support you getting onto the assessment day, but those processes are slightly different. They're not assessed in the same way. Have I explained that, Kat Bambry? That's slightly confusing, but
I think you have. I mean, I think just from a purely practical perspective, if anyone is unsure about whether to apply to first steps and they are eligible, I would absolutely say to apply to it, because I don't think it's a big trade secret to say, is it, Ella? I hope I'm not overstepping, that first steps has a higher offer rate. Like, you've got statistically probably, well, quite a significantly better chance in pure numbers of getting onto the first steps program, simply because not all students are ready at that point to commit to law as a career. They don't necessarily know what's out there. They aren't as prepared as lots of you are now. So don't worry also if you think, oh well, I don't want to apply to first steps this year because if I'm unsuccessful, then that might count against me in subsequent years applying for academy. That's absolutely not how it works. We always think favorably of people who apply year after year if they're unsuccessful, even if you get onto first steps but then you don't get an academy offer and then you subsequently apply to academy, that's absolutely fine as well. Again, we know that candidates grow every year. They get better at certain skills, they gain experience. So you're not at a disadvantage in terms of the fact that you can absolutely get a place on academy with or without any previous work experience, let alone first steps. But if you're ready, absolutely give it a go, because once you're on first steps, you've basically got a fast track opportunity, and even if that fast track doesn't work out, there's zero disadvantage, if not still an advantage, to any subsequent engagement with the firm. So I hope that helps between the two of us.
Absolutely, and we see people applying, year after year, and we actually really like people to apply year after year, because it shows things like resilience, drive for achievement, which we've talked about quite a lot already in this session, and it shows that you're really passionate about working for CMS. So absolutely don't be put off if you've already applied in a previous cycle and have not been successful. So the next question is from Zena, and she has asked whether interviews are university blind, and the answer is absolutely yes. So all of our interviews that take place are completely, totally CV blind, and that is to manage things like implicit bias, but also because here at CMS we are very, very passionate about social mobility. We do an awful lot of work in that area, like to talked about talked about earlier, with using things like contextual recruitment, and just using CV blind sort of applications that we put in place to support individuals from particular backgrounds. A question for me from Olivia. She has asked, what do I feel differentiates CMS as a firm? This is a really great question, and I'll answer it from sort of my individual perspective first as an employee here at CMS. So first up, I particularly, when I applied to CMS, what made it stand out for me is honestly how welcoming and just lovely everybody is. There's lots and lots of different firms out there, and the culture is all going to be very, very different depending on which law firm you want to apply to. And as part of that research piece, you'll be able to get a feel of what different cultures are like at different law firms. And for me, when I was applying for my particular job, the culture here at CMS just really spoke to me, and the individuals here were very, very passionate about their roles, about their employees, and about sort of the wider working environment as well. So that's what differentiated it for me as an individual. But from your perspective, if you're thinking about applying, what I think differentiates our application processes and our programs is, one, the emphasis that we put on things like contextual recruitment and our holistic approach. So we've spoken a lot about how we like to look at your application as a whole. We like to get to know you as an individual rather than just looking at things like academics, because we don't think that portrays individuals in the best light all of the time. So the emphasis on that sort of holistic approach and that contextual approach is really, really important. And I think that really helps differentiate the type of individuals that we employ here and who ultimately become the trainees, the associates, the partners in the future, because we're looking at individuals for their best qualities rather than for, you know, their academic qualities that you pop down on paper, which, although they are very, very important and they help, that isn't the be all and end all of being a successful lawyer. Okay, hope that's helpful. Next question then is from Liberty. Liberty has asked, can you give any insight into what sort of questions you might ask in the video interview? I'll ask you that one, Kat.
Sure. Excuse me. So, and this is probably something where I can't be giving any real trade secrets out, but the video interviews, typically the questions will change every year, but every year there are going to be, I would say, a blend of competency-based questions. So, i.e., you know, we want to know when you have exhibited one of the competencies that we value in the past, and you will have to explain how to answer that. So, you know, it's a bit like the classic STAR model. If you've heard of that before, there'll probably be at least one question that will be in that format. So, you know, in terms of any advice, you can obviously have a look at our graduate website, see what we say about, you know, what are our key trainee markers for success in terms of skills and competencies, and, you know, have a think about how you would you know, look at your experience and illustrate some of those. You know, there's always likely to be a question that will be around a more commercial question. So either around CMS itself and something that we do and what interests you about that, or something more broad in terms of perhaps, you know, commercial challenges for our clients or our sectors. And then we also quite like to include questions that are more situational, because, you know, in keeping with everything else, you know, it's not just about what you've done in the past, but how you would approach tasks in the future that we're interested in. So I would say prepare for there to be a question that asks you to perhaps put yourself in the shoes of a CMS person, whether that's a trainee or a solicitor apprentice, or someone else in the business, and think about the kinds of challenges that you might be faced with in that role, and how you would deal with them. So be prepared to look back at your experience, know lots about CMS and our clients, and then also put yourself in the shoes of someone and think how you would act in that situation. And if you're prepared for any combination of those questions, you'll hopefully go into the video interview with a little bit more insight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, that has taken us to the end of our session. I'm so sorry if we didn't get through all of your questions. If you've got any burning questions that we haven't covered yet, please do email us at earlytalentacquisition@cms-cmno.com, and we will be able to answer any of your burning questions via email. Whilst we just wrap up, I just wanted to ask you another question, another poll, before we talk about any upcoming events. So following today's session, on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel about the application process now? So this is the same question that we asked you at the start of today's session, but we're just interested to know if you have found this helpful. So again, 1 being extremely confident and 5 not confident at all. So again, I'll give you a little bit of time to think about that. Whilst you're submitting your responses, I just wanted to highlight some of our upcoming events in our webinar series. So next week, we start a fantastic session on commercial awareness and the client. Like we've said already in this session, some of the questions that you may be asked written or video interview may be around things like commercial awareness. They may be around things like how to work successfully with clients. So this session will be really, really helpful if you are thinking about submitting an application for us. We will be joined by experts from CMS who will demonstrate to you the importance of being commercially aware and how to be client-centric throughout the application process. Then next Friday, we are excited to have partnered with our very own social mobility network, where we will hear from individuals from all levels of the firm who will share their experiences to hopefully dispel the myth that any particular background is a barrier to the legal sector. We then also have a couple of fantastic skills-based sessions coming up around communicating with impact and imposter syndrome, where we'll be joined by some external specialists who will provide you with some critical tools and resources in order to be your best self throughout the application process, interview process, and generally in your academic and legal career. So don't forget to tune in to the 2nd of November, where you'll hear more about that, along with information on our assessment days. We also have some CMS live events coming up. So if you want to come and meet the team in person, get a feel for our offices, we have still got some live events coming up, including in Sheffield, Bristol and in London, where you can come and meet the team and get a feel for CMS in real life. So do check those out as well. So following the poll then, I can see that lots of you have popped down that you now feel extremely confident. So it was just 2% earlier, and that has now raised to 15%, which is absolutely great news. 36% of you feel very confident, and none of you feel not confident at all, which is great, because that's a real improvement from earlier. So that brings me to the end of today's session. A big thank you to Kat Bambry for taking time out of her busy schedule of reviewing applications to come and chat to you all today about her insiders tips. It's been super, super helpful. A huge thank you to the Meet and Engage team for all the technical side of things, and thank you to Kat Crisp, who's been busy answering your questions on the chat. Mostly though, thank you to you guys for giving up your time this Friday afternoon to come and talk to us, and we wish you all the luck with your future applications.